So yesterday I was discussing about how Nero was, or apparently was, the man or the one of the 7 heads of the beast whose deadly wound was healed. And it's not the narrative that your preacher tells you. In fact, I can tell you that none of the narratives that your preacher tells you is the truth. None of them. You can't find a single one that's the truth. It's all based in lies. So, one of the things that I do here on this YouTube channel is unravel the lies, expose the truth with the limited resources that I have, with the limited education that I have. But I do this because it's the right thing to do, and not to charge anybody any money to do it. It's the law. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. That's why it's free. So as I said yesterday, I was discussing Nero. How, you can look at the video if you haven't seen it, how he supposedly had committed suicide, but there are reports that the suicide attempt failed, and supposedly, I was not living there, so I don't know for sure, but supposedly he had gathered himself an army in Greece and was going to take Rome from Galba. Galba found out about it. Galba had him killed and had his head hoisted up as a trophy, etc. But you can read that, or you can listen to that video from yesterday. What I want to talk about today is the Abomination of Desolation. We'll look it up. Alright, so you see right here, Abomination of Desolation as spoken of by Daniel the prophet. The Abomination of Desolation, what was it? Well, it was the statue of Zeus, aka Jupiter. The Greeks called him Zeus. The Romans called him Jupiter. Now we can look at we'll look at context here. Matthew 24 verse 15 first. This is the time of the tribulation upon the Israelites, the Jews, in Jerusalem. Verse 15, and when you shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Let him whosoever reads understand. Now, like I said before, there was a controversy on whether Caligula actually did that or not. Well, he placed the image inside the holy place. He did, but it wasn't set up. They put all the makings of it in, and the peasants, the Jewish peasants, threw all that stuff out. This was like, I don't know, was it 20 years before the destruction of Jerusalem? This is talking about, I suppose, that at the time of the destruction of Jerusalem. The reason is because there's something written in Daniel 12. Okay? So when you shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. What is the abomination of desolation? That is this image right here. Right here. The image of Zeus, Jupiter. And incidentally, this image is at the Vatican in Rome right now. Does that face, does that hairdo and beard look familiar? It should. Because this image stands in all of the Christians' so-called holy places, their houses of worship, and they call it Jesus. I'll continue. Then let them which are in Judea flee into the mountains, etc. This is a time of great tribulation upon this people, as it is written in Luke 21, verse 20. All right. For these are the days of vengeance, and all these things which are written must be fulfilled. And there shall be great distress in the land, in the Eretz, and wrath upon this people. By whom? By the Gentiles. Until what? And Jerusalem will be trodden down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. Now, so we're going to look in Daniel 12 for a minute here. Now, there's some unanswered questions here. People assume a lot, but you must read Strong's Concordance. And even sometimes Strong Concordance don't get it right. Now, if you want to find the true number, all you have to do is go to Revelation 11. Now it says right here, and from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away. All right, that was, I believe the daily sacrifices were stopped in the middle of, on the Roman calendar, July of 70, the year 70. Okay? Which is probably the reason why it's 1,290 days rather than 80, because the temple was actually burning a month later. Well, I believe the temple was destroyed a month later. It was on the 9th of Av, which would have been in the Roman month of August. Okay? And that's probably the reason why 1,290 days is mentioned here. So the destruction of the temple was complete destruction of the temple was a month later. The time that the daily sacrifice stopped was a month earlier, and that's the reason why 1,290 days. Okay? Now, and the abomination makes desolate set up. Now, didn't live back in those days. I don't know, you don't know, and the historians don't really know. The only thing we've got to go on is what is written in the scripture. Now it says, and there shall be 1,000. What is this supposed to? This is, King James says 200, but what does it say in Hebrew? 3967 is Mayal. That just merely means 190 days. Huh? 100? You see what I mean, folks? So there have been, I think the JWs do this. They don't realize that this may not be 200 after all. Just 100. So we don't know. We have to look to other scriptures to find out. Okay? Now, but it's talking about the abomination of desolation that was set up. Well, who set up the abomination of desolation at the time that the daily sacrifice was taken away? Well, we know that answer. We know that answer. That was Titus. See if I can find it. What? There's something in here I haven't seen before. I'm going to read this because I haven't seen this before, about the gnat going up his nose, causing a large growth inside of his brain and killed him. Alright, I think it's in here. I think the whole thing is in this particular, Titus Caesar Vespasianus, the son of Vespasian. Alright, he besieged and captured Jerusalem and destroyed the city and I'm not going to say second temple because I can make a claim that it was the third temple. For this achievement, Titus was awarded a triumph. The Arch of Titus commemorates his victory on that day. During his father's rule, Titus gained notoriety in Rome, serving as a prefect of the Praetorian Guard, and for carrying on a conversational relationship with the Jewish queen Bernice. Despite concerns over his character, Titus ruled with great acclaim. Following the death of Vespasian in 79, and was considered a good emperor by Suetonius and other contemporary historians. As emperor, Titus is best known for completing the Colosseum and for his generosity in relieving the suffering caused by two disasters, the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 and a fire in Rome in 80. After barely 2 years in office, Titus suffered from a fever. On September 13th, 81, he was deified by the Roman Senate and succeeded by his younger brother Domitian. Alright. Family background. I wanted to find, what I really wanted to look for was where he placed, right, should be right here. The I still don't see. Siege of Jerusalem. This is fairly long. Maybe I should have done a little bit more research before I started this video, but sometimes things just come to me on the fly, okay? Alright. Still can't find it. It probably was there. I'll have to set up the image of Jupiter on the temple. See if I can find it that way. I still can't find it. We know Hadrian. Statue. Let's look up statue then. I know that Hadrian erected a temple to Jupiter on on that site, but Titus did it as well. We should all know this by now. Unfortunately, statue of Jupiter. Let's see. Set up by Titus. Destruction of Jerusalem. They must be hiding it now. But anyway, I'll probably find that later. But Hadrian, who came later, he murdered all the leftovers that were in Jerusalem who did flee to the mountains. He murdered them all. And then he did set up a statue, or set up a temple to Jupiter, where the temple was. Right? There's something written in here I may need to look at. Alright, for the city of Jerusalem, the first Judean revolt against Rome culminated in the capture and demolition of the city in 70 by General and future Emperor Titus Flavius Vespasian, son of Vespasian, I should say. This was followed by the eventual rebuilding and renaming of the city as Aelia Capitolina by Emperor Hadrian in 130, and then a violent response to the Romanization of the city by the Bar Kokhba revolt. That was a second revolt, which lasted from 132 to 136. In the space of several decades, not only had the city of Jerusalem and the temple suffered obliteration, but the entire region had been desolated by wars, just exactly as it says in Daniel 9. Desolations are determined. That's what it says. And Roman had even attempted to erase the memory of the city, the land, and the events which had occurred there. And indeed, the Christians to this day, by calling the land Palestine, they are on the side of Hadrian. Not long after the triumphal entry in 33, I don't know if it was 33 or not, and they say Jesus, but it's Yehoshua. It never was Jesus, never shall be Jesus. Yehoshua predicted the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, even specifying that not one stone would be left on top of another, which would not be torn down. According to the multiple historical sources, the temple was reduced to rubble in the Roman year of 70, and when the Romans finally breached the city walls after a siege of a few months and destroyed the city, including the entire temple complex, while the Gospels emphasize that the obliteration of the temple, Yehoshua, not Jesus, also predicted the siege and destruction of the city. In these predictions, Yehoshua, not Jesus, specified that armies would surround the city, besiege and destroy it, and that the people of Jerusalem would be killed and led captive, and that Jerusalem would be tread down by, not the nations, but by the Gentiles, as I have pointed out to you so many times before. And after more than 3 years of fighting in Judea, the Romans, under the leadership of General Titus Flavius, finally surrounded Jerusalem with 4 legions. The 5th Legion Macedonia, the 12th Legion Fulminata, the 15th Legion Apollinaris, and this is in honor of Apollyon or Apollo, and the 10th Legion Fretensis. Okay? However, remembering the predictions of Yehoshua, not Jesus, the followers of Yehoshua, not Christians, in Jerusalem fled the city and surrounding areas. They say with most temporarily relocating in Pella during the war. This is out of this particular book. Jerusalem was a city of magnificent defenses, with walls added in phases as the population expanded, and by 44 it had 3 massive walls. The Romans were able to easily breach the 2 outside walls, but despite infighting, the defenders held out behind the last of the wall for a few months. Eventually, however, the Romans took the Antonia fortress and then burned the temple, which was supposedly accidental. I told you yesterday, the reason why they burned the temple is because the Jewish soldiers vexed the Romans so grievously and vehemently that they lost control of their tempers, and Titus lost control of his men, because Titus wanted to save the temple and take it piece by piece to the Pantheon in Rome as a trophy. According to Josephus, General Titus had sought to spare the temple, but convert it into a pagan place of worship. And this is on Josephus's book, The Wars. About 4 weeks after, the final holdouts in the upper city had been defeated, and the ruins of Jerusalem were in total Roman control. Archaeological excavations throughout the city have shown the extent with which the city was destroyed and the temple was annihilated. In fact, the only remains of the temple seem to be loose stones and broken pieces of the building pushed off to the side of the mount or littered around the platform, indicating a total demolition of the temple, just as not Jesus but Yehoshua had predicted 37 years earlier. Why then do the Christians today, knowing history, knowing that this prophecy had been fulfilled, why do they keep claiming that it is yet to be filled again in the future? Why? It's done. And that it would be remaining, the Gentiles would continue to tread upon the holy city, and they still do. They still have their cathedrals, their mosques in Jerusalem to this day, until the time of the Gentiles comes to an end. That's what it says. We've gone over that so many times, folks, in Matthew 24 and Luke 21. Josephus noted that Jerusalem was so thoroughly laid even with the ground by those that dug it up to the foundation that there was nothing left to make those that came there believe Jerusalem had been inhabited. So you could not even find any evidence that Jerusalem had been previously inhabited. The destruction was so great. Corinthian capitals were discovered among the ruins at the Jerusalem Temple Mount. This was the most popular style in the Roman Empire, a favorite of Herod the Great. During his reign, Herod had remodeled and expanded the entire temple complex. If he remodeled the entire temple complex, then wouldn't that have been the third temple? There was Solomon's temple. There was Haggai's temple. And Herod's temple. That is 3. Including building a portico around the complex which used these capitals, but every building on the Temple Mount had been burned and torn down by the Romans. Toppled blocks from the ruins of the Jerusalem Temple complex were also found in the 1st century street below to the west. In the rubble, a stone from one of the towers at the corner of the Temple Mount was found inscribed in Hebrew, reading, "To the place of the trumpeting." Looted treasures were carried off to Rome as victory plunder displayed on the Arch of Titus in Rome, including the gold menorah. During the fighting, thousands among the defenders of Jerusalem were killed, and after the capture of the city, thousands more became slaves and were spread around the empire, were scattered among the Gentiles, exactly as is written. So again, why do the Christians insist there must be one more destruction of Jerusalem? Why? It's not written anywhere that there must be. It says it will be trampled by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles comes to an end. And when the time of the Gentiles comes to an end, as we read in Luke 20:21, It will be time for the Gentiles' tribulation. It is time that the Gentiles will be cut off. Exactly as Paul warned about in Romans 11, where he said to the Romans, "Blessed are you if you do well, but if not, you shall also be cut off, and they will be grafted back in." Paul said that in Romans 11, and that is the reason why Christians refuse to read Romans 11. It is estimated that 1/3 of the population of the Judea province was killed or enslaved as a result of the revolt. Sects of the Essenes and the Sadducees disappeared, but the synagogue and the Pharisees rose to greater prominence, becoming the future of Judaism. And the prophecies that not Jesus but Yehoshua made, a siege and destruction of Jerusalem by armies surrounding the city, the total annihilation of the temple, the death of many in battle, and the fleeing of others, the enslavement and scattering into different parts of the world, and the trampling of Jerusalem by the Gentiles have been fulfilled. Once the fighting had ceased, General Titus departed for Rome, but left Legion 10 Fretensis stationed at Jerusalem to defeat any remaining resistance in Judea and to keep the area under Roman control. But I was looking for Titus, and it's out there. Some of you will be able to find it. But the statue of, let's see, the statue that was set up is this one. And it is also the same statue that Caligula set up in all of the synagogues in his realm, including, well, he attempted to do it in the temple, which caused the great revolt. To begin with, this therefore is the abomination of desolation, as spoken of by Daniel. It is also an abomination of desolation that Christians bow down and worship in all of their congregations. Now, I did do a video back last year, in October of last year, the Satanic Trinity, what Christians really worship. And in it I said, you Christians have accused the Jews of being the Synagogue of Satan, but today I am calling the Trinitarians the Synagogue of Satan. In this video, I provide undeniable proof that the Gentiles replaced Jehovah, the Elohim of Israel, with the idols of the Greeks. The idol of the Greeks. Zeus, which is what the Latins call, as they say, God. The Italians, the French, the Spanish, Deus. But that's actually Zeus. And this is his image. This is what the Christians have made a graven image of to honor Satan. As is written, idolatry is written in Acts that idolatry is forbidden. I'll go there in just a second. So, it replaced Jehovah, Elohim of Israel, with idols of the Greeks, Deus, Zeus, Satan. The true cognate of is the ancient Greek Zeus, king of the Olympian gods in Greek mythology. That would be Deus is a true cognate, or the Zeus is a true cognate of Deus. And I picked that up in Wikipedia. By combining a form of Deus with the ancient Roman word for father, pater, one derives the name of the mythical Roman equivalent of Zeus, the sky god, the altar of Zeus is indeed the synagogue of Satan. Therefore, the Trinity is Satan. The image above is Zeus or Satan. That's what Christians worship. They worship that in their houses of worship every Sunday in honor of the sun idol Baal. This is the same image they worship on the cross. Therefore, all buildings with this graven image is the synagogue of Satan. So it was you Christians who worshipped at synagogue of Satan all along, or worshipped at the synagogue of Satan. So you can go check that video out. But let's see, Caligula, as Zeus. Early rain. Okay. So, as I've said in many of my videos before, Caligula was the man of sin that Paul wrote about. And what started him on this path was an illness that befell him. This illness turned into demon possession. On October 30 of the year 37, Caligula fell seriously ill, or perhaps was poisoned. He soon recovered from his illness, but many believe that the illness turned the young emperor towards the diabolical. Yes, he became demon-possessed. He started to kill off or exile those who were close to him, or those whom he saw as a serious threat. Perhaps his illness reminded him of his mortality and the desires of others to advance into his place. And he had his cousin and adopted son, Tiberius Gemellus, executed, an act that outraged Caligula's and Gemellus' mutual grandmother, Antonia Minor. She is said to have committed suicide, although Suetonius hints that Caligula actually poisoned her. He had his father-in-law Marcus Junius Silanus and his brother-in-law Marcus Lepidus executed as well. His uncle Claudius was spared only because Caligula preferred to keep him as a laughingstock. His favorite sister, Julia Drusilla, died in 38 of a fever. His other two sisters, Livilla and Agrippina, the younger, were exiled. He hated being the grandson of Agrippa and slandered Augustus by repeating a falsehood that his mother was actually conceived as a result of an incestuous relationship between Augustus and his daughter, Julia the elder. Let's see here. Financial crisis and famine. Feud with the Senate, Western expansion, Mauritania, Britannia, claims of divinity. When several client kings came to Rome to pay their respects to him and argued about their nobility of descent, he allegedly cried out in the Homeric line, "Let there be one Lord, one King." In the year 40, Caligula began implementing various controversial policies that introduced religion into his political role. Caligula began appearing in public dressed as various gods and demigods, such as Heracles or Hercules, Mercury, Venus, and Apollo. Reportedly, he began referring to himself as a god when meeting with politicians, and he was referred to as Jupiter on occasion in public documents. The sacred precinct was set apart for his worship at Mytilus in the province of Asia, and 2 temples were erected for worship of him in Rome, the temple of Castor and Pollux. The forum was linked directly to the imperial residence on the Palatine and dedicated to Caligula. He would appear there on occasion and present himself as a god to the public. Caligula had the heads removed from various statues of gods located across Rome and replaced them with his own. It was said that he wished to be worshipped as Helios, or Baal, the sun god. Indeed, he was represented as a sun god on Egyptian coins. Caligula's religious policy was a departure from that of his predecessors. According to Cassius Dio, living emperors could only be worshipped as divine in the East, and dead emperors could be worshipped as divine in Rome, only dead ones. Augustus had the public worship his spirit on occasion, but Dio describes this as an extreme act and emperors generally shied away from. Caligula took things a step further, and those in Rome, including senators, worshiped him as a tangible, living God. And so Caligula is the one who said that he was a god, the one that Paul talked about in the book of Thessalonians. Now, the cause of tensions in the East was complicated, involving the spread of Greek culture, Roman law, and the rights of the Jews in the empire. Caligula did not trust the prefect of Egypt. Flaccus had been loyal to Tiberius and had conspired against Caligula's mother and had connections with the Egyptian separatists. In 38, Caligula sent Agrippa to Alexandria unannounced to check on Flaccus. According to Philo, the visit was met with jeers from the Greek population, who saw Agrippa as the king of the Jews. As a result, riots broke out in the city. Caligula responded by removing Flaccus from his position and executing him. In 39, Agrippa accused Herod Antipas, the tetrarch of Galilee and Perea, of planning a rebellion against Roman rule with the help of Persia. Herod Antipas confessed and Caligula exiled him. Agrippa was rewarded with his territories. Riots erupted again, this time in Alexandria in 40 between the Jews and the Greeks. Jews were accused of not honoring the emperor. Disputes occurred in the city of Yamnia. Jews were angered by the erection of a clay altar and destroyed it. In response, listen carefully, Caligula ordered the erection of a statue of himself in the Jewish temple of Jerusalem. A demand in conflict with Jewish monotheism. In this context, Philo wrote that Caligula regarded the Jews with most especial suspicion, as they were the only persons who cherished wishes opposed to his. The governor of Syria, fearing the civil war, if the order were carried out, delayed implementing for nearly a year. Agrippa finally convinced Caligula to reverse the order. However, Caligula issued a second order to have a statue erected in the temple in Jerusalem. In Rome, another statue of himself of colossal size was made with gilt brass for the purpose. The temple of Jerusalem was then transformed into a temple for Caligula, and it was called the Temple of Illustrious Gaius, the new Jupiter or Zeus. Now you know. Now I have to go.